think the honorable thing for our species to do is deny our programming. Stop reproducing. Walk hand in hand into extinction. One last midnight, brothers and sisters opting out of a raw deal.
Do not trust any friends or family members. I repeat, do not trust friends.
Yeah. The tunnels are wild. They're way better than the tunnel in New York.
Or the tunnel made of shoes. All right. Xtinction Agenda, ladies and gentlemen, with the original Captain America. James,
is it you?
It's you. No, I did it wrong. Sorry, I was with James and the original Captain America, and then
other James.
Yeah, and Master of the Mystic Arts,
Chris.
Yeah, there we go.
Chris.
I'm not going to do that every time. Just James and I were joking.
That's right. Yeah, because we were joking earlier about giving out the respect we expect.
Oh, absolutely. Deserve.
So we come together under these joyous auspices to discuss Art Spiegelman's Moths. Why are we doing this? We wanted to do this. It's been a fucking year. It's been a year since those assholes in Tennessee, that school board,
in America.
Yeah, literally a year since, and we've been talking about it since. And so it's actually pretty cool that we're doing it now. And I found out why they censored it.
I looked into that. Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah. What did you get? Well, I didn't do a really, but it was like 8 curse words and nude imagery of woman.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find it. He says Indian depiction of Mother Sue. We'll get to it.
I got there was a couple places it got banned also. I don't know if this was in the States or if it was in another country, but apparently it was also banned for the swastika on the cover. It was because it's a modified swastika. They were like, that's promoting hate. And they were like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's the book's the opposite of that. And they were like, oh, that is what it is. And then they changed the cover and then they allowed it again. But
interesting.
I can't remember where that was.
That happened. Something like that happened in Russia in 2015. But I'm sure Moz is perpetually under assault, I would imagine, in a really ironic sort of way, or perhaps fitting sort of way. Yeah. Anyway, so we've arrived at this. So there's 3 books that are heralded as the thing that said that made it okay for adults to read comics. Hey kids, comics just ain't for, or hey folks, comics just ain't for kids. And it's your Dark Knight Returns, 1986. It's your Watchmen, which I think is 1985. And then, seems very weird to say this, Moz, 1986 or perhaps 1987. It starts coming out, but it doesn't, it starts coming out in 1980, but it's not collected until 1986, volume 1. And then we don't see volume 2 until 1991. What's always bothered me and struck me as so weird, and I've already alluded to it, is that Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen are held on the same level as this book. They're so different in so many respects.
Well, mostly because they're for entertainment purposes.
Yeah. That's the biggest difference right there. And then the other ones are like deconstructing superheroes, Batman. Batman. That's a cool book, and I'll love it as a part of my soul for the remainder of my life. But it's trash, right? It's not really important in any respect. But then you get to Moz, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is something a little different. This is something frankly, I'm not going to say it was unique at the time. I'll say it's special then and special now. I would say.
Yeah, I'm
special still.
This is my first go around. You guys have read this a few times?
Just once for me. Other than this.
Yeah, it's not like a party romp,
No, you can't just dip into it for fun.
As a matter of fact, I don't think I'd read it since I first bought it. Way yonder, age 19, age 20, or whatever. This was the book. This was one of the books you're supposed to read, right? And it was great, but I liked it a ton more this time. It was I grew in a way that the book made a lot more sense to me. So that's awesome. So James, your first reading, first impressions. What do we got?
I know you guys caught me kind of complaining about it a little bit at the beginning because it's a bit of a slow burn, and also we're following sort of the exploits of his dad, right?
Yeah.
But there's also like his dad's sort of post-war bizarre behavior, like post-traumatic stress behavior, plus broken home. So there's a lot of like you have to be willing to accept that you're getting sort of that narrative's part of the story, and part of the journal of what happened to him in Auschwitz, and how it affected his life afterward, and how it affected his child, in wanting to retell the story. I think that started weaving together. You guys suggested this would also happen, which you were right about. It was in the second book. I felt like I more enjoyed that narrative as well, about his dad. Mm-hmm. And it wove the story together in a nice way. It just gives it a lot more depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the autobiographical elements in this are the parts that I appreciated a lot more. I think I bet I skimmed them more when I was younger, or at the very least they didn't hit me. But like as you get older and you're dealing with your parents, and things are weird, and sometimes they have experiences.
Yeah, and there's a little dementia at play here for it's Vladek, right? I'm pronouncing.
Yeah.
Vladek Spiegelman and Art, and there's Anja, and who's the new wife? She also
Mala.
She also leaves. She's great. Really enjoyed when she took all his money and left. He just went on these
cares about people.
He just went on these tirades, and they had to drive him around in the car, and he's just an old. He's fucking broken. Like, he's doing his best to live, to live in a normal life, but his trauma is fucking deep,
Yeah, I read it differently in this sense. I felt that whatever Vladek had went through in the war, it was merely, and this is the sense I got from the book. Obviously, I don't know this guy. My sense was that, like, he was a certain way prior to the war. He was always very, I don't know, let's say pushy or willing to put himself out there. And what the effect of the Holocaust was just to sort of like exaggerate that.
Yeah. If it even did, like, my takeaway when I first read the book was like, oh yeah, like, look at, like, this thing never leaves him, like the way he scrounges for things. And like, actually, like, reading it again, Spiegelman's saying exactly the opposite, like that. There's even scenes where he's talking to Mala, and they're complaining about just how he is, and Art says, I used to think the war made him this way, but she says, we know a lot of people who went through the camps. No one is like Vladek.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely where I get that impression then.
Okay. Yeah. Well, because he was very resourceful through the whole story. I'm really maybe I'm really cutting ahead here, but he was in the right place at the right time. He was doing the right things. He was forward thinking. They mentioned it in the story that he was present minded. That he had a hammock at the end that got him above everybody else in the trains, and then he was basically selling snow for little bits of sugar, like all of those things, like all the little minor things he did to sustain himself. He couldn't even move, and he was fighting for his fucking dried bread. Like he just, everything was, I mean, there are some things that drive home I don't know if this is supposed to be picked up this way, but there are things in this book that drive home stereotypical Jew like sort of interpretive behavior,
Yeah. Well, they say that like Spiegel Art is talking about, like, I forget where it is, but he essentially says just that. Like, I'm concerned that I'm portraying my dad too stereotypically or something like that. I think that another reason this book works so much is because it's interrogating itself as it's writing itself, so to speak.
Especially in part 2. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
I hate Vladek. I hate people. This is gonna could be easily interpreted as racism, but like, I hate people like that. I like the sort of the pushy, always looking for a deal. Hey, won't you consider, really like that bartering behavior? Fucking hate it.
It is a very Eastern European thing, boy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think you see it all over the place, but you see it at different styles of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And like, I hate like the impulse behind the style. Let's say that. I find people like that tend to be very disagreeable, and this book confirms my prejudice.
Yeah. He reminds me a little bit of my grandfather in a way,
right?
Like the haggling at a store sort of thing, where it is a difficult kind of person to be around.
Yeah. But at the same time, like that, there's a dual side to it, because we're jumping all over the place, and when he's talking, until the last moment we must struggle together. When he's talking to Anja, and bucking her up and saying, like, we got to keep going. And he emphasizes together as well too. Like, there's a loyalty to him and a love.
Oh, absolutely. Even towards art, like, I think there's a love. Like, he's my darling, my sweetheart. He's very like. One moment that I was thinking through, like, was the sorry to cut you off, but the when he finds the comic that he did about his mother and the suicide, and he's so upset, but then afterwards he's like, it's probably better that you got out of your system, all's forgiven. Like, he doesn't dwell on it.
Right. He's very present-minded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And you think of that too. You think, well, he's just doing that to enable having his son around and in a good mood, because that's what he needs for his progression at that time. And that's sort of what that's how he survives this, is enabling what he needs to get from point A to point B in that moment all the time.
That's true, but I also know, like, my father-in-law is a guy who doesn't know how to talk to people outside of work, so he'll like find work sort of projects to show. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like, just that's how he connects with people.
Right.
I can kind of understand that mixing of like being unable to like be outside yourself but still reaching out. Like, it's sort of both things. It's sincere and also just your way of being.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely like, where do you put nurture? Where do you put nature? Like, obviously the Holocaust has an effect on people, and like I said, I took it as he was always like that, but maybe the war made it just a little bit worse, or the extermination effort upon the Jews. I should be more specific, because there's not a lot of war in this book. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was going to say, and I kind of appreciated that, because you're getting his pure perspective of his own experience. It's just an angle. You get an angle in on what he saw only, which is important, because the way that they sort of systematically like made changes and herded people and registered people, and the way that they went about this was so calculated that seeing it from this angle was very different from what I normally thought of, like how the Nazis did what they did.
And even a little different than you'll get from a lot of popular depictions. You'll get the cattle car imagery, you'll get the roundup. I'm trying to think about what your staples are in your Holocaust adjacent films. The ones that aren't
Yeah, you'll get the separation of the men and women. You get the Magneto herding.
The Magneto,
the Magneto.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the other version that you get. You get the old Magneto.
Yeah. As you guys are talking about that, I'm thinking about like there's a real like this is all like difficult to talk about in a way that's appreciates the full horror of the camps. But there was more of an agency or some wiggle room that you wouldn't think of, like the way that Vladek, even in Auschwitz, can, position himself or exchange food for some sort of service or befriend a guard, and then get his shoes fixed so that he has some advantage that allows him to work towards getting his wife into the camp, which is desirable because was it Dashout the other one? Oh God, I can't. I'm blanking.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's funny I didn't write that down either, but I think you're right.
Yeah, because he says from his perspective, Auschwitz was the camp that you worked, and so they killed you slower, but the other one was just like a death, like you were just waiting to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at the map. We got the back here. We got Auschwitz, and then we got Birkenau. Maybe that's
Birkenau is the one. Yeah, Birkenau.
Yep. Sorry about that, folks. The politics is not erased by the death camp. Even in the death camp, there is a politics. And I think what James you were saying is, or Chris, I guess we're also saying is that, it's weird. It's weird to think that in that space this is not weird. Like this is what humanity was reduced to, in that space. In a lot of ways, like the basic rational actor, commerce, and it's mostly around commerce too.
Trade, exchange. And at the end of it, like from his intake group, he says that he's the only one who survives. I was thinking about James. You were talking about the resourcefulness, and I agree. Like I think I don't know if Spiegelman is too close to it, but I do see there are definitely qualities to Vladek that do, not that they're virtuous or like that they make him that he should have been the one who survives, but he everything that they do to delay going to the camps and to hide. I think of that coal bin that they construct with the false bottom and like the tunnel underneath, and just kind of like hiding and delaying the inevitable. That all kind of factors into him surviving.
It's true. Even the little job, he would make sure that he could be involved in working. Like he even lied about his trade abilities, and it was just he just did everything he could to just and he was just, it wasn't just like ham-fisted. Like he was aware of where he needed to be, what he needed to be saying. And like you say, it's not virtuous, but it's impressive.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
It's I think during it's weird how virtue is context dependent. In the camps, it is virtuous. He's helping people. He's saving people. He's both impressive and virtuous. He's heroic. But those very same qualities that make him a hero when placed in a civilian attitude in situations, he's just a fucking terror, and just like a shitty old man. Shit. I want to compare him to Animal Man from Full Metal Jacket. You're like that. The guy's a real asshole. But if there's someone throwing grenades at you, he's the one you want. And that's maybe that's an unfair comparison to Vladek, but it's kind of maybe that situation.
I think go ahead.
No, I don't have a further thought.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say when I said virtuous, I was thinking specifically of something I read in an interview with Spiegelman. I think it was with NPR, where he was saying that. What did he say? Oh, right. He was saying, so they asked him, like, did he ever want to revise his father? Did he ever want to just kind of like try to present him in a better light? And he said, it became a strength rather than a liability. He said that I found it a lot richer than if I had a far more exemplary father, because if I did, then I'd have a book maybe whose ultimate moral would be, if you lead a virtuous, exemplary life, then you too can survive the Holocaust. And that's not the point. The point is that everyone should have survived the Holocaust. There never should have been a Holocaust.
Yeah. Sorry, and this is going to sound stupid. Like, is that the point of Maz? Like, I think the ancillary, like the obvious conclusion that one reaches from any reading of the Holocaust in general is that it should never have occurred. Like, and World War II or any other mass murder, you're like, what the fuck? Like, Jesus Christ. But I don't know if that's what this story in particular amounts to. Like, I read it this time as much more of a family drama that just happened to also have a Holocaust narrative inside of it. And it was really about the connection between father and son and the memory of lineage, that kind of thing. Like, it ends off with all those like actual photographs. Yeah, and then there's Vladek himself there. I love when he puts little photographs into it. But yeah, they're going over the family tree. I think it's in chapter. Yeah, here we go. Page 114 of volume 2. As we're reaching the sort of conclusion, it's just about what happened to the family, and how the war, but you could just as easily not have involved the Holocaust. Would have been a much more boring narrative, I would imagine, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's all inextricably linked, and I think the one thing I just kept coming back to. I mean, I don't think I appreciated this in the same way the first time I read it, was that really, I think more than anything, the text really wants to ignore, or to put aside easy answers. It's really concerned with being completely as objective as possible. And that includes putting in things that are challenging or difficult or that complicate. And I love the there's that instinct in the second book. I think he put it very well to interrogate itself constantly. But it starts off with that. Like, what will you be, Francois? Like I'm trying to think of like what the French will be. And I think he makes her a frog or whatever. And they have that conversation, like, they're driving in the car, and he's like, in real life, I would have never had a chance to say all this without you interrupting me. And so it's like, even as the memoir, it's asking us to constantly think about how things are presented and how memory works. And there's that one. He reads something in a book about a band playing.
Yes,
band
thank you.
At the Gates. Yeah, yep. And he's like, oh, I don't remember that at all. It didn't happen. And he's like, oh, it says that they were. It's
well documented.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like, all memory slips and all things kind of are challenging in that way.
Yeah, and this is one of the favorite things I like to, not favorite things, but it's a go-to thing that I think about often when I'm thinking about memory and historical memory. And an alternative effect in historical memory, even of something as profound as the Holocaust. Like, apparently, survivors of the Holocaust, some when told, like, they'll say, I'll just make something up. Like, I saw Lieutenant whatever at Birkenau while I was there. I swear to God, I saw that guy, and such happened, right? And they believe that it really happened. However, then you check the registers or whatever, the notes, the documents, and you discover that Lieutenant whatever was never in that camp at all. That whole experience could not objectively have occurred. However, because they saw it in a documentary on TV or they read about it in a book, memory is altered, even amongst those who have survived it directly. And I just find that so fascinating. The malleability of experience and memory and how it can be mediated, even in a situation as unique as a death camp. It blows my fucking mind. And I was so happy to see something spoken to about that phenomenon with Vladek. Although his is one of an erasure of memory rather than a creation of one, I was still like, yeah, like, what do you do with that? Like, who do you believe? you believe the person that was there? Do you believe the record? What do you do? I love that conundrum. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a lot of I'm sure that has a lot to do with the pushback on the book too. And that's honestly, that's like sort of what breeds, to me, that's like a lot, like you can really wiggle your way into conspiracy thinking that way as well.
Oh, what do you mean?
Like you can start to, like, I feel like that's like a building block of like deconstructing.
Oh, I see
like,
what you're saying.
What didn't really happen here then, and what's this person's memory interpretation of it, and there was a really great quote in the books, guys. I'm really sorry I didn't flag it properly, and I just really loved it. And it was something to do with like did you think like he survived because he deserved to survive, or didn't everybody deserve to survive? And it was something along the lines of what you were saying, Chris. But there was this other quote that I flagged, and it said, life always takes the side of life, and somehow the victims are blamed, but it wasn't the best people who survived, nor did the best ones die. It was random. And I think that goes with the idea that the whole thing shouldn't have happened. It's not really a story of the spirit of his dad or anything. It's just sort of he wanted to give you a snippet of the event.
Yeah. That's a psychologist who like almost has this like nihilistic view when they're talking. He doesn't feel survivor guilt. He just feels sad.
Yeah, I think that was the guy. Anyway,
yeah.
That's in volume 2.
That's
after
right.
What chapter 2, volume 2. Yeah, Auschwitz, Time Flies. Yeah, this is when we start getting into like, God, that image of the like people burning in the oven, like the mice. Like when Spiegelman. We haven't really talked about Spiegelman as an artist in this. We've really been talking about just the narrative. But one of the many reasons this book works is Spiegelman's like virtuosity and ability to, like, it's very kind of boring on the face of it, but he's got all the skills to create any sort of effect that's required in like this cartoony style, and even the choosing of them as like anthropomorphized animals, mice and pigs and what is she, a mouse or a rabbit? She's a mouse. What was she going to be?
I like that the Americans showed up as dogs. That was good.
Yes. Right.
Kind of gave me a little chuckle at the end.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that. What do you guys think of that? Like, I mean, just that we haven't really talked about it, but like, yeah, there is this like obviously it's the conceit of the book is that you can, or that all the races are depicted as different animals. But it doesn't have to be that way. I was trying to think through like because I think there's something Spiegelman talks about comics having this like an intense symbolic power. Clearly he's channeling something through that.
I think to give it that much, like, okay, so I've got a little bit of information on Spiegelman and, in the artist studio and what are his influences and stuff like that. And he has a long career in the undergrounds, and, comes up out of that, like out of the crumb tradition. But mostly like it's newspaper strips. Like, I honestly, he drew them as cartoons because like that's what you do in a cartoon strip. They look like little animals. You anthropomorphize the animals. You make it kind of cutesy, and you do a Winsor McKay, or a Chester Gould, or a name your comic strip hero. And I took it in those terms because like it's more like it's like. If it has if we were to take the comparison to Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, which seek to like make childhood comic strips adult, Maz is kind of doing the same thing actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, he's like, what if Charlie Brown was hard as fuck? is kind of like that's in the DNA of this book. And so many others, like you could go on and on through the list, but that's how I've come to view the choice of the animal characters. And like, yeah, it implies a sort of racism. Fine, whatever. Yeah.
You finish your thought.
No, I don't know if there's anything beyond that. I'm just like, I'm not interested in any argument that like it somehow categorizes humans and perpetuates the same sort of stereotypes which thereafter would allow the Holocaust.
No,
I'm not saying you say that, but
yeah. If anyone does there, that's wrong. But I was taken by that. Like part one opens with a quote from Hitler. The Jews are undoubtedly a race, but they're not human.
Right.
And I have to think that like there is something more than just making comics to that conceit. Like I think it's I don't know if I can explain it properly, but it's almost like just like literalizing, like I guess the metaphor of being racialized, right? Like you're imposed because this has been imposed by the Germans. Now everything is seen through this filter, and it's inseparable from what's been done. Like the behavior of having to hide and scramble and scavenge to survive, just like is a mark on history.
Yeah. It certainly fits into but then if so, and I don't want to interrogate this too hard because like I like the idea, but then why are the Poles pigs, and why are the French frogs, and why are the American, like the fact that the French are frogs in this is funny and traditional, like
I'm doing the chef's kiss over here.
Yeah. I just don't that quote doesn't do the work that it doesn't do as much work, or it doesn't. Yeah, I guess it does too little work to explain the choice that was made. And I think that there's just a comedic element at the heart of Spiegelman. Like he's kind of, it's a gag. It's just a funny gag, but he takes it as far as you could fucking take it.
Yeah, but maybe it's two steps. Maybe it's like the fundamental is the cat and mouse, and then you need to fill in the world with other examples. So that's where it becomes kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I agree. The central metaphor, it's too good a central metaphor. Maybe he was just like, I'm not giving this up, and
exactly.
What am I gonna do?
An allegory often works that way, where it's like there's the key parts of the allegory, and then there's stuff that kind of just fills in around it. Yeah. I think also go ahead, James.
No, I was just going to say also, I mean, the whole book is about race. So, I mean, sort of, why not broadcast it in that big way,
Yeah, no, that's definitely part of it. Why fuck around? Just like,
Also, there's like a smoothness. This is silly too, but there's like sort of a smoothness to his art. But he's not using very like heavy detail in expressions, and he's like muddling some of the art, and some of the art's like the details like very panned back, like you're getting a very big world sort of in the artwork. And this maybe sounds silly, but I took it, part of it, as maybe he's just doing it so it's easier for you to identify characters.
Although, well, actually, I had the opposite problem. Well, if so, then it creates more problems than it solves. Because I was sometimes like, I don't know how to separate these characters. They all just look like mice or whatever, and they're dressed differently. And there maybe sometimes he manages with the body language and stuff. And again, this gets down to the subtlety of his cartooning. But yeah, it is. You can identify who the Jews are and who the Nazis are easily enough. But sometimes characters get lost.
Yeah. Vladek has vests sometimes. Well, I guess not always. I think that I was thinking of this like the old Scott McCloud too, like, and what you were just saying, the like that axis of like expressionism or like the sort of cartooniness becoming more universal. And with that, I was when Spiegelman talks about the power of comics, so like the iconography, I was thinking just like there is this it wants to set itself up in an ironic way against Disney, I think, and a little like especially in the second one. I think there's a quote about Disney, which is I don't fully know how to work through that, but there is like a deep irony given to Disney cozied up to. That I think there's like it represents sort of this commercial access where, and then in the Time Flies chapters that all the people are interviewing about the book and asking like, you've read the book, now join the ride or buy the vest or whatever.
Yeah, actually that connection, and again, that goes down to the undergrounds as well. Like there was a big free speech case with a bunch of underground cartoonists. I forget the story, but basically they told all these crude pornographic stories about Disney characters and released them as a zine. The Sky Pirates, I think, is, if anybody wants to look this up, like look up Sky Pirates Disney copyright, something like that. And it was a big court case. It was a big deal. It was very traumatic to the underground community. And the issue of free speech, a lot of head shops got shut down, cease and desist, sued. So I think it's personal in addition to everything you're saying, like in addition to Walt Disney being a Nazi and creating the House of Mouse or a Nazi sympathizer. Like that's there too. But I hadn't. Thanks for making that connection. It's such an obvious connection that I wasn't thinking about. Thank you.
That fills in for me. I didn't know about the copyright case, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
71. Yeah, Air Pirates. There we go. So yeah, that would have been
Air Pirates. Thank you.
Within recent memory for him.
Well, because the comic that he publishes with the Prisoner in Planet Hell is from 72. So he's in the indie scene at that time, where, like I said, with Crumb. Incidentally, that comic that's reprinted in this book, like that flashback comic that Vladek finds, Francois Mali, Spiegelman's wife, apparently reads that comic, falls in love with him, and has to talk to him. And so, their relationship is born of that comic. And I just thought that was such an interesting, particularly since Francois, who is so important to the to Raw magazine where Moz was first serialized. She's one of the reasons I didn't think she was a big deal up until a certain point is because in this story, you don't really get the sense of how she's supporting this art. And what role she's playing in its creation and that sort of thing. She's really sort of a side character who just hangs out with Vladek while Artie goes talking to the neighbors or something. She's very incidental to the narrative. And I know it's not about Spiegelman. I just thought that I don't even think it was telling. I think it was just an explanation for why I didn't see a bigger role for her.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. I didn't realize all that.
What was your saddest part? You guys got a saddest part?
No, it wasn't. It was much more it was way more biographical than I didn't actually pick up a lot of emotion from it. I think the saddest part for me is going to be weird, but it's just him wanting his son to just live with him. Because he just lost everything, and he just wanted to be close to his family, to the people he loved, and he, he's listen, Dad, come on, we're here for a couple days, we got our own lives,
Mm-hmm.
and his post traumatic stress, whatever, or just like you guys are saying, is just his general Jewish behavior. He's just this. His general behavior plus his post-traumatic stress has got him in a position where his wife, won't even, is just taking money and left. And he's just kind of a broken down old man that wants some company. And that's sad to me. That's a fear. I don't know. That probably is for a lot of people. And to compound the behavior. My Polish grandma, war bride, she used to do the most bizarre things and cook the weirdest things just to and it was like they're fairly well off. And like she would still make fucking soup out of rutabagas and not throw things out and just like buy all the cheapest ingredients to make these like horrible recipes. And it was bizarre, to think that you could be, based on whatever you like, depending on how bad your childhood was or your trauma was, you could just cling on to these behaviors as valid survival tactics,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of and that maybe that gets down to what I was saying earlier about like the story's ultimate aim. Like it really is. If at the end of the day that is what we're left with, if after the story that's what we're left with, we just feel sad for this guy that wants to be loved by his kid. I think it supports my contention that like the Holocaust narrative was almost not needed. I mean, I'm not saying obviously it was, because that's what the point of the book is, but I'm just saying like which is why I saw it more as a family drama.
Yeah. I would go with that, and I think it's I'm not saying that that's all I took away from it. I'm saying that was my saddest moment.
Yeah, that was the question. Yeah,
but also like I think Anja's death is horrific, and also it's sort of a love story, or at least that was fit in there, or that his passion or his want to protect Anja and to have this relationship and to be in love and his love for her was what sort of like propelled him to survival. There's an angle there for that as well.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, at the same time, the sort of like that horror of him, like when he first meets her, he starts going through her medicine cabinet. He's like, this woman with all her pills, I don't know about this. And then they're like, oh no, it's okay. Yeah. She just has these pills because she has nerves. He's like, okay, I can accept that. But like, just could you just imagine going through somebody's medicine cabinet?
Well, I can now.
I will now.
Yeah. No, there's a wisdom to it though.
For sure. Again,
he's constantly bartering. Like, and again, this gets down to like, so he has someone that he's with and sleeping with regularly. Like, is it because she's from a rich family? Does that have anything to do with it? Like, given the Vladek's personality, like he does seem to love her, but at the same time, like he's so materialistic and seeking. I couldn't help but she's got to find out huge tracts of land, like. I don't know. Again, this is dicey territory to go down, but I think it's fair. I think it's warranted by the text, just by like the way Vladek acts.
I don't buy it though, because you know what? Like if that were the case, then like plenty of opportunity to get rid of her, like in one way or another, because he really had to fight to get her holding on.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that like one of the things that maybe this book has me thinking about right now is like the fantasy of, not that like ultimately there's material concerns at the base of, I guess I end up in like a vulgar Marxist territory briefly, is that, ideology and, the explanations for what we do are merely excuses for what we choose to do for material benefit. Even our love, even our emotion, all that stuff, it's all fantasy, it's all false consciousness. And ultimately, Vladek demonstrates a capacity to, squirrel his way through material needs and come out the other side. Extremely uncharitable view, but it did put me in that mind. Like I think there's lots
I didn't pick that up.
No, there's lots of elements that argue against it, but I guess it just got me thinking about that way of viewing the world.
Fair enough.
Yeah, for whatever that's worth. But.
Yeah. You want to know my saddest part?
Yes, please. Yeah. Tell your story.
One thing that's never left me from the first reading is that image of it's as things are getting bad in the ghettos, and then the that Nazi officer just picks up that kid by the ankles and like swings him into a brick wall and kills him. Like,
yeah, that was heavy.
That's fucking horrific. Like I'll never forget that.
Yeah, they said if the kids were crying, that's just what they would do with them.
Yeah, and just like I guess like by extension, Rishao, like the sort of acceptance that Vladek has, that, you know, oh well, if we just sent him away with his family, maybe he would have still been alive. But it's not like he's not dwelling on it. It's just like he's come to terms with it. But I don't know. That would fuck me up forever, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were so the way that the rules sort of changed for them to live, you know, how it went from like a little downtown and everybody having family meals together and having their own shops to just, like you say, into a ghetto, and then it was registering, and then it was like, oh, these people are being sent over here, and it's just the way that it was, like how it was done so slowly and symptomatically, and how Vlad, like you were talking about, Vladek was talking about how it when he described that, like how he was just talking about it so like matter of fact. It was just like he was just, to him all of this was normal, and he just had to get to the other side of it. Like he somehow did.
Yeah,
which is one of the great values of these Holocaust narratives is, okay, I'll go back in time, or I'll just rewind a little bit, and I'm going to show sympathy for a moment for conspiracy theorists. Conspiracy theorists are constantly worried about, their fantasies are ridiculous and often anti-Semitic, so there's an irony to me bringing this up, which I recognize. But they're deeply concerned about tyranny, and they're deeply concerned about the concentration camp, and they're deeply concerned about, like, even at the Alex Jones level, which are complete fabulists. Nonetheless, they're concerned about, they're selling a concern, I'll put it that way, about the normalization of atrocity, and specifically the normalization of suppression, the normalization of like registration, the normalization, you know, like their ultimate concern is the death camp. And one of the things that, if you wanted to be sympathetic to them, just for a moment, in some sense, you could say that, like, yeah, like it suddenly atrocity and state violence become normalized, and we've seen it happen in history, and it looks very much like Vladek's experience. Now, tends to be against minority groups, et cetera, which is where
always,
which is where the conspiracy theorists of, like, you know, of the Alex Jones ilk, that's where they definitely fail, because ultimately they want to engage in the extermination of minorities. But anyway, yeah, it's a valid fear. You know, there's a reason to be concerned about slight changes. You know, even slight changes sometimes presage big changes, and those big changes sometimes you can't put them back in the bottle.
Yeah, because it is a kind of a slower slide. I think about too the like, what's the opening image? The very first thing that we see is Art falls while roller skating, and his friends leave him behind, and his dad just what I wonder what they'd be like if you know, and if they had to go through the Holocaust, like they'd leave you behind in an instant. And like that's like the opening moment of
I love
dad. This is the baseline, his dad, how he sees the world.
And I don't know when this comic was drawn, because it's not like it's an early image. I think it was a prototype that he did in Arcade magazine. I might be wrong about that, but yeah, the guy's like, if you your friends, if you lock them together in a room with no food for a week, then you see what it is, friends. I just think that's so fucking intense.
And then jumping forward to that image on the train, like where he like literally he's like, I'm glad that people were dying, because like it got a little less crowded in there.
Yeah, fuck. Yeah. What were you gonna say, James?
No, I was gonna say, actually, you know, when you did that mini dramatization of Vladek's speaking, I can't remember if I told you guys, but Kate has been sick, and so she sat down, and I had this book out, and she just started reading it and like loves it. But she found Vladek, the direct push of Vladek's sort of broken English dialect to be very, very tedious to read.
Interesting.
Doesn't enjoy it. Like, it's not like she's having trouble with it or anything. But it's annoying. It's an annoying touch that maybe you could have skipped.
Well, but that's part of it, you know.
It's true. That's part of the weird charm, I guess, or part of something you can pick to say, I did not enjoy that telling.
Yeah. My sad one flows off of what Chris, you were talking about with the kid Richelieu. When Tasha, the aunt, or I don't know, whoever she is, she kills the kids rather than let them go to the camp. I thought about it made me think a lot about what death by poison feels like and how long that would go on. Like I'm not sure those kids got a better death as a consequence. They just got one that at least the family chose it. I think that's the one that sat with me the most throughout all of this, particularly since like book 2 is dedicated.
She killed 3, right?
3, yeah.
That's a lot. But then you have to, then you think of the way that the boy died by being splattered against the wall by the Gestapo. You have to think like, how long, did he lay on the ground with like a convulsing with a brain injury or whatever before dying? Would you rather have a sip of Nanny's potion or whatever? But I don't imagine that they had access to top tier instant death poison either, like you said.
Whatever vial
it would not have been a nice way to go either.
And I know that was me feeling like the book really doesn't focus on that at all. It's almost incidental, but like it captured me, and I found myself lost in the scenario and just like was like, fuck, that's fucked.
Yeah. And the other thing too about
just grounded.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say the other thing too about this is that this is going to sound awful, but some of the depictions of death in here are tame compared to what the Nazis actually did. Yeah. Like, I mean, children could have been sent to, Mengele's lab or whatever, and they could have just injected them with fucking, flesh-eating bacteria or whatever and watched them squirrel around in a room, or they could have tried to crossbreed them with their sisters, or like attached other limbs to them, or given them the old frostbite test and tried to revive them. Like, they did a lot of shit a lot worse than that. So, depending on what these people were hearing that the Gestapo were doing at the time, that they may have gotten off easy with poison too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, Mengele's, I don't know. Like, is it statistically likely that would have been something that most people would encounter?
I guess not, but I thought that they used a lot of kids out there.
Testing of that nature is, to my understanding, not the norm. There was just like, it was one particular house of horrors. I could be easily corrected on that, though. It's not something I've looked into.
I don't know how many labs they had. How many?
Yeah, well, now we're getting into conspiracy talk. These Nazi labs everywhere.
That's not conspiracies, bro.
Go to Brazil right now.
Oh no.
Yeah. Shit, there was actual thought that was going to flow from that. That's
apologies.
No, I was. It did remind me. Like, I've read some really wild Holocaust narratives, like it was a fucking circus in some of these camps. In certain instances, you got a cruel sergeant who would like crack the whip and make people run around, and really treat them like circus animals. You'll get all that stuff, and I guess maybe that wasn't Vladek's experience, obviously. And like I prefer the lack of sensationalism in all of this, even if like the horror is sufficiently awful, but it doesn't it doesn't masturbate over it. It's not like, this is not a Holocaust porn book. I find that like some Holocaust related issues will, not issues, like materials will just really emphasize like the horror, the hell, and there's a place for that, but I think it like we thrill to that in a way that we shouldn't. It's exciting, right? It's interesting. It's intense.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Mm. But for these individuals, like it was just a lived experience. It just like it really sucked. Like and
there's a lot of minor
downside.
like I don't really want to use the word banal, but like there is in his experience in Auschwitz, like you do get that, like the Polish guy who's put in charge of them and like makes them like exercise and run around and like exhaust themselves, but then like Vladek by knowing English becomes this guy's tutor because the guy's trying to play both sides. Like, well, if the Americans win, I want to know how to speak English, and then that guy gives them little tips like, stand on the left side of the line when the SS comes to round you up, and like you'll be all right. I guess those little leads and things like that. So it's like the horror is constantly there. It's just the resourcefulness that kind of helps him blunt it a little bit. But then you get those shocks of like that suddenly there'll be that guy who, like, he's drawn like a cat, and it's like, oh, like, he just kept saying that he was a German, and then they just like drag him out and beat him one day until they beat him to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just talked. And I guess like when it's funny, like, because these are transcripts of actual conversations with Vladek, or based on transcripts, like how else do you tell the story, right? Like it's that's another thing that makes this so. And I don't mind using the word banal. There is a banality to the camps. I think that's what this book reveals. Horror next to banality, driven by banality. The subdued nature of the narrative comes from the fact that it's just an old man telling the story to his kid without adornment. And
that said, it's like it's the project between father and son that keeps his son coming around. Otherwise, he'd probably avoid him more. So it's like, even though he doesn't necessarily want to tell the story all the time, it's, that's what they're doing. That's father-son time.
Yeah.
And but I like what he says. Oh, sorry. I just like when he's coming close to like a first draft, and like his dad's like, yeah, like I'm even interested in this story. Dad, it's your story. Yeah, I know the story and I'm still interested.
That sounds like such a loving dad thing to say, though.
Yeah, there's like just these little charming moments where you're like, yeah, in some ways this guy, not so bad.
Yeah, but speaking of when he is so bad, and one of the more when they pick up the black guy and he's like, oh, you've got a black guy in the back, and he's just fucking freaking out.
Oh god,
he was he's having like a freak out in the back seat or whatever, and he's like, Dad, you I can't believe you'd act like this about race of all people. You know what it's like to be persecuted for no apparent reason.
Yeah, and like his saying is
like
just
a
like
fucking asshole, and then that's when he really gets down low, and he's like, you can't compare us to them, and then he realizes he's got an old horrible racist dementia dad. Even though he was persecuted, he can't break free from it.
And that's another just like such a valuable message in Maz, is that like hate finds a way, right? God. Yeah, and like it's never extinguished. Like even within Vladek, the Holocaust exists as an impulse. It's right there. Even though he went through all of that, there's the idea that like, okay, well, it was bad that it happened to me, but it should happen to someone else. And like that's so illuminating of the human condition to me. And it may, to my mind, maybe I'll take it back. Like, if there is an ultimate sort of, well, we've identified a bunch of ultimates, but like, what's one of the final messages of the book? Like, it's got to be that. It's got to be like, look, he went through all of this, and he's still freaking out about a black guy.
Yeah.
And like, look at that. Look, and then puzzle over it. And
I think too, like, I just find this such a disturbing thought, and I don't think that it's the book's message, but I think of that psychiatrist that he's talking to saying that, like maybe we needed a bigger Holocaust, like maybe because people aren't getting the message. Like,
Right.
how horrible would it be that that's the place that you end up thinking about?
Yeah, that's a funny way of putting it. I'm trying to find out. I know where he talks to the psychologist, but I can't see it. I don't know. Isn't that more of an ironic statement though? Like, is it really a statement of desire on the part of the speaker, or is it just be like, it's like to get the attention of people nowadays, you got to hit them with a sledgehammer.
No, I don't think it's a statement of desire. I think it's a statement of like nihilism, like just despair. Nihilism is too strong a word, but I think just this is the psychologist who's talking about how, it's actually right after that quote that James referenced. It wasn't the best people who survived, nor did the best ones die. It was random. I'm not talking about your book now, but look how many books have already been written about the Holocaust. What's the point? People haven't changed. So it's a moment of reflection on like, what is this project even going to accomplish, if anything?
Yeah.
But then I think Spiegelman does have an answer. Like, he quotes Beckett and says that every word is like an unnecessary stain on silence and nothingness. And the psychologist says yes, and he's like, but on the other hand, he said it.
Well, then there's a pause, and then this gets like, and that's such a rich moment because obviously that's a comedic moment so they have this deep conversation, and then through the power of comics, it's a gag strip to end it off.
True. Yeah, and it does play out like a gag.
Yeah, chef's kiss. And then maybe you can include it in your book, and then of course he does, right? It's like he's having his cake and eating it too, and he's fucking around with the size of himself in like sitting in the chair. This is really that Beckett thing stood out to me as well. Why speak about anything? But I think I'm glad he did. I'm glad that there was a decision to, like, this is so much work. When did this go on? This started in 1980 and went on until 1991. Yeah. So 11 years of work on I don't know, slowly released. Like Raw Magazine didn't do like a monthly thing. There's not a lot of issues. But it's, each chapter went out with it, and I don't know. It was an accomplishment that, like, I think it still is an accomplishment, and it did change comics. Like James and I, when we were prior to getting on the call, he was talking about, like, I showed him those images from Raw Magazine. He was like, "That's some beguiling shit." Here in Toronto is our premier comic shop is the Beguiling, and
is it still?
I think it's one of the best shops in North America. It's just not, it doesn't have a cool place anymore. It used to have a cool place. Now it's still, but it's still the Beguiling, right? But you don't get places like that without Moz. It opened up the market through the efforts of Art Spiegelman and through the distribution efforts of Francois Mali, his wife. She made this book show up places and get purchased and end up in bookstores and become the thing that now everybody else tries to emulate. It was a thing, and a worthy book. I mean, it wouldn't have succeeded if it wasn't, excellent. Anyway, I don't have anything beyond that.
Absolutely. What is there beyond? Yeah, it's amazing. It highly deserves its stature. Like, there's really nothing more you can say about it. Banning it is stupid.
Oh, there we go. That's right.
Oh, wait, nice one.
Yeah. Fuck you, Tennessee.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck that.
That's kind of low hanging fruit, though.
Well, let's remember why we came here today. We came here for the for the low hanging fruit, and we fucking got it. We came for the tunnels.
We came here to
tunnels
say suck it, Tennessee.
Now, all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.